Major funding for this special Frontline series is provided by this station and other public television stations nationwide. Additional funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Tonight, a Frontline special series of portraits of the people of the Soviet Union. This is Dinara Asanova. She's a Soviet feature film director. A woman driven by her art, finding a way to mix important social messages with the required state positions in her films. Tonight, Leningrad movie.
From the network of public television stations, a presentation of KCTS Seattle, WNET New York, WPBT Miami, WTVS Detroit, and WGBH Boston. This is a special Frontline series with Judy Woodruff.
Good evening. Tonight, the last in our 12-part series on life in the Soviet Union. The series is called Comrades. It was made by a team of producers from the BBC who traveled throughout the Soviet Union for almost 2 years. They were allowed access rarely granted a Western film crew. Frontline is bringing this series to the United States because it offers unusual insights into what life is like for some Soviet citizens, people about whom we know so little, people who live in a secretive society. And when we do hear about their society, it's usually in news reports that deal mainly with exceptional events. Comrades deals with the ordinary. It's a series of portraits of Soviet citizens. And tonight, in the last of these portraits, we go to Leningrad to meet a controversial woman film director who learned how to bend the rules. The program is called Leningrad Movie. And at the end, I'll be back to talk to the producer about how it was made, and with experts to find out more about the world of Soviet movie making. This program is narrated by the series producer, Richard Denton.
In April 1985, a truck from Goskino, the State Committee for Cinema, pulled into a burial ground at Frunze in the Central Asian Soviet Republic of Kyrgyzia. On it, a simple wooden box contained the body of Dinara Asanova, a Soviet film director who died unexpectedly of a heart attack at the age of 42. Although she came from Kyrgyzia, Dinara worked in Leningrad, one of the centers of the Soviet film industry. Her work provoked strong reactions, not always favorable, but personally and professionally, she inspired great loyalty. Many of her colleagues had traveled thousands of miles to be at this funeral. It was in Leningrad, in the summer of 1984, that we had started filming Dinara. The city had become her home, and at the time, she was putting the finishing touches to her latest film, Dearest Darling Beloved. Dinara at work. Having started as a film editor herself, she takes a special interest in what goes on in the cutting room. For the last 8 years, she's always used the same editor, Tamara.
She really likes the post-production period, the editing. She always says, filming is filming, but now we really make a movie. That's strange. Few directors can give up their film scenes as easily as she does. It's not easy even for me, the editor, to cut out a scene. But she'll cut it out completely. She usually says we have to follow one storyline, the basic one.
Single-mindedness is a hallmark of Dinara's work. On matters that are not strictly political, the authorities in the Soviet Union do allow more criticism than is sometimes imagined.
Please start now if you're ready. But watch your frame, okay?
But they still have an equivocal attitude towards the people who speak out, and it's not a pastime for the faint-hearted. Dinara's latest film is an example of her determination to avoid the party-approved stereotypes of Soviet life and to portray a more recognizable version of reality. The heroine of the film is a girl who steals a baby and then pretends it is her own to see how her married lover reacts.
So we're leaving this song in, right?
Definitely. Just cut out the first verse and don't forget to tell them at the recording.
Going to meet her lover, heroine and baby hitch a lift from another man. And the bulk of the film is about how the relationship between these ill-matched strangers develops during their journey.
Что ты умеешь делать по-настоящему?
Любить. Любить. Что ты смотришь на меня? А я знаю, что жизнь прекрасна и удивительна. И женщина создана, чтобы любить. Презираешь?
Ок.
Презирайте. Что с вами разговаривать? Все равно вам этого не понять.
The leading actor is Valera Priomikov.
You see, she's Kyrgyzian. They had no written language, mind you, until the revolution, no written language at all. Therefore, they still think in visual images, not literary ones. She's probably one of the few Soviet directors, you can count them on your fingers, who is so strong cinematically. She's really a film director, not a stage director. I can hardly think of another Soviet director who can do things like she does.
Priomikov often works with Dinara, and on this occasion he also wrote the screenplay.
Sometimes I want to do the scene one way and she wants to do it another. So she says, let's film both versions. But then she films my version badly and her version well.
By Soviet standards, Dinara is a spectacularly hard worker. But having completed Dearest Darling Beloved, she has time for a rare afternoon off.
Give me your paw.
A chance for a day with her husband Nikolai, her son Anvar, and their dog Gina. All Dinara's films are about relationships under stress. Her own punishing work schedule gives her some first-hand experience, and it's a preoccupation she shares with one of her main screenwriters, Yuri Klepikov.
Everyone has problems. All of us have. She has as a mother, me as a father. She is a director, me as a screenwriter. A whole bunch of problems. Never run short of problems dealing with young people. Well, it somehow seems to happen that whatever I write, the heroes of my scripts are always kids. It just happens. Well, either tough kids or just ordinary boys and girls of, say, 14, 16 years old.
It was Klepikov who wrote the screenplay for Dinara's first film, Woodpeckers Don't Get Headaches. Though rather a sentimental story, it was well crafted and showed her distinctive ability to direct young people.
А что ты будешь делать после школы? Вступлю в институт. А потом? Буду работать. А потом? Выйду замуж. А потом? У меня будут дети. Сколько же у тебя будет детей? Не знаю. А потом? Я стану бабушкой. Ты бабушкой? Ничего смешного. У меня будут внуки. А потом? Потом я умру. Как умрешь? А что будет со мной? А ты? Ты будешь стучать на своих барабанах, кататься на воротах, задавать дурацкие вопросы. Федорова!
А ну вот у меня стоит.
On summer evenings, the Asanovs are often at home. Some guests come to be entertained, others to do the entertaining.
Is that a sort of hormone, gamma globulin? Should I give it to the dog, maybe? Is that what I should give him?
Well, it depends on how serious it is. It's not serious.
One way Dinara copes with the conflicting demands of work and private life is simply to work wherever possible with her friends and family. Her son, Anbar, has had more than one part in her films. The sentimentality of Dinara's early work soon gave way to films with a rather harder edge, and she was perhaps lucky to be assigned a production manager who shared her tastes.
You see, Dinara always reacts very personally to what you might call, well, the anomalies of the society, to all those so-called negative aspects. She reacts, as we say, with all her heart. Therefore, she chooses them as her artistic subject, not in order to enjoy it and to just expose those aspects, but to make the public somehow start thinking about these vices, flaws, about these anomalies, to make her spectators reflect and do something to rectify these faults. If you wish, art has a role to play in that, and an important one.
The Restricted Key was her second film.
Так, интеллектуальная пауза. Тише, тише. Интервью. Значит, звуковое письмо потомкам. Все ясно, да? Пожалуйста, Таня, свет. Леша, фотографируешь? Опа.
Что будет-то? Я готова.
Алла, ты уверена в себе?
Пока да.
Сережа, какие у тебя отношения с родителями?
Сложные.
Почему?
А у тебя не...
A group of school children on a weekend away with their teacher decide to play the truth game. The game is recorded on tape, an unmistakable metaphor in the Soviet Union.
Хочешь замуж?
Замуж? Не, не хочу.
А детей?
Хочу. 5.
Интересно, где она возьмет детей без мужа?
The game takes on an uncomfortable tone when it's the teacher's turn to be questioned.
Нравится наша школа?
До сих пор нравилось. Конечно, при бабе Симе лучше было.
Моя Павловна хороший учитель.
Не понял.
Throughout the discussion which follows, the tape is left running. The conversation is recorded.
Марина Максимовна, а как вам наш новый директор? Нравится? Слушайте, ребята, предупредили бы, что экзамен. Я не готовилась. Да просто как человек. Нравится? Нравится или не нравится? Что значит нравится, не нравится? Он не кандидат в директора, мне его не выбирать, он уже директор.
The film thus explores concepts of truth, privacy, and state authority. It was a thinly disguised allegory.
Well, you should always argue with your bosses. What do you think? If she only used positive characters, there'd be no arguments? Of course there'd still be arguments. That's what bosses are there for, to have arguments with. Otherwise, they wouldn't be bosses. Nothing unusual about it.
The party authorities keep a close eye on what the Soviet citizen can watch in the cinema. A number of films made in Russia never reached the public because the studio authorities are dubious about their aesthetic or ideological correctness. None of Dinara's films has suffered that fate, though they sometimes sail close to the censor's wind and always provoke thousands of letters from the public. By winter, her latest film is being shown all over the Soviet Union, though not to particularly good reviews. Back in Leningrad, the critics notwithstanding, preparations are underway for the next production. Lenfilm Studios was the first film studio to be set up after the revolution. Here, Dinara's team are reassembling. The same production manager, the same editor, the same designer, the same assistants. They call themselves the family.
You promised to bring it to us.
Brown?
Yes. Brown. The color must definitely be brown. And for some reason, I haven't got any.
The new film will be called The Unknown One. Once again, it's the story of a young girl with problems. She moves into a new area and buys social acceptability with the in-crowd by posing as that unexpected socialist phenomenon, a rich party brat.
Natasha, I think you should hang the sketches that way. Or, you know what? Let's put Natasha's on one side and the others on the other. We need an actress in costume. I told her we must take her picture and we have a chance. The photographer will be here at 1. That's it.
The young cast will be almost exclusively amateur. In theory, work should go to people who belong to the Actors' Union. But the studio regularly allows Dinara to ignore that rule, and the union has no real power to enforce it. The script is once again by Klepikov.
When it comes down to it, Dinara and I have always agreed on the subject of youth. I think that subject, it challenges us in a most poignant way to face the most difficult problems of our life today. Our reality.
Dinara gives the youngsters who've been shortlisted a screen test in the studio makeup room. Her technique is to interview them while trying out makeup and hairstyles. By deliberately putting them ill at ease, she hopes to sort out those who'll be able to cope with her unorthodox methods and with improvisation.
Толя, подвиньте немножко вот эту левую створку. Не знаю куда. Вот так, стоп.
Давай сюда только. Да? Сейчас. Там будет немножко мешать. Условия игры.
I've told you the rules of the game, right? And we talk through the mirror. I ask you a question, you try to give me a full answer. Not just yes and no. If you feel like giving me an example, do it. Show me the way you think, but only through the mirror. Okay, is everybody ready? Now, here's the first question. How old are you?
18.
18. You have lived 18 years. Have you ever thought about yourself?
Yes.
Wait a minute. Listen first to the whole thing. Have you ever thought about yourself? Where you are today? What you've achieved? And what you really want? Is that clear?
No, I just don't understand this. What do you want?
Well, what I mean for the future. Okay, you've got a question. Answer me through the mirror while we're rolling. If you don't understand, ask again, okay? Roll sound. Camera.
Test 15. Take 1.
What you really are.
I've often thought about it, really. Especially when I'm alone at night. Well, about who I am, what is the real me, why I don't know how to say it, why when I'm unhappy
The mirror.
And I don't think I understand something about what you mean, what's that? I mean, what do you want?
In a word, what do you want to be in general? What do you exist for? Why were you put on this earth? Is your life settled, defined at the age of 18?
No, on the contrary.
It's on the contrary that I'm interested in.
The script has already been approved, and now excerpts from these interviews will be cut together into a demonstration reel, which will be shown to the studio's artistic council. This council exercises ideological control over all film production. Dinara has compiled showreels like this before. Sometimes she uses parts of them in the finished film, as she did with Tough Kids, considered by many to be her finest film to date.
Маленький. И куда вы их прятали? А мы кому-нибудь в квартиру, у кого мать ничего не говорила. Человека ударишь? Могу. За что? Даже просто так могу. Я мог бы. За что? За того хотя бы, что я был просто злой.
Tough Kids deals with the way delinquents are treated by the authorities at a correctional summer camp. The two social workers disagree over the respect boys should show for the people in charge of them. Actor Valera Priomikov, again in the leading role, articulates Dinara's own philosophy.
Какой фантик там шастает?
Шмырев.
Иди сюда. Воду наносил?
Наносил.
Брысь в палатку.
А ты, Паша, у них свой в доску. Любому можешь сказать фантик. И ничего. Попробовал бы я в этом духе.
Что у тебя было по психологии?
По психологии, не поверишь, отлично. Насчет работы с трудновоспитуемыми подростками. Психология заключается не в том, чтобы позволить им тыкать. Ты уж извини, Паша.
Понимаешь, старик, у каждого пацана, по-моему, должен быть мужик, которому он мог бы сказать «ты». Хорошо, если это отец, а если его нет?
Это примитивно. Дальше смотреть надо.
Я педагогических вузов не кончал, старик, так что вот мне кажется. Извини, пожалуйста.
У нее не было отца.
She never knew her father, and she always says that every film she makes should give them, fathers, children, you know, that sense of parental warmth. That is the important thing. You see, she was an orphan, a large family, a hard post-war childhood.
Это послевоенное детство.
But that liberal approach is severely tested when the kids go on a rampage of violence and arson. Valera summons them to a confrontation.
Паша, прости нас. Прости.
Кого прости? Тебя! Или тебя! Тебя! Или тебя! Ты помнишь, кто ты был? Смотри в глаза! Ты помнишь, как ты год назад у меня в коленях валялся? Паша, прости! Паша, выручи! Подонок! Смотреть в глаза!
I was very frightened of playing the scene because she had said it should be really something. So I kept postponing it day after day. Then she'd said, enough waiting. Let's film it today. So we started, and suddenly, somehow, it happened. And when they cut, I looked up, and she was crying behind the camera. And that's when we understood somehow that the film, well, would work.
А ты, голубчик, смотреть в глаза! Из какого дерьма я тебя вытащил? Смотреть в глаза! Глаза! Животные! Я вас не прощаю. Я вас не прощаю!
Even by choosing delinquency as its subject, this film was controversial.
I think in general that every work of real art must cause controversy. It must, because that's what gives the art its meaning. If everyone agreed about the meaning, that would be a really serious problem.
Although she has still to choose the juveniles for her latest film, Dinara has cast the role of the young girl's mother and father. The film can therefore move on to principal photography. Dinara's way of getting around the studio's monitoring system is to make changes in the storyline as she goes along. The script the Artistic Council saw, for instance, described the father as an office worker, but the crew are now setting up to film in an artist's studio because Dinara has changed him into a painter. What's more, the paintings she's going to use in the background have been done by her husband, Nikolai, even though his work is officially frowned on by the authorities. The scriptwriter is philosophical.
Well, this is the third film I've worked on with Dinara. So I was expecting some sort of trick. Something was bound to happen. But nonetheless, I was a bit stunned by this, I must admit. But on the other hand, she's probably right, in her own way, because her husband is an artist. She knows a lot of artists. It's her world. She probably had something like that in mind when she changed the script. In the end, maybe she's right, so I just let it go.
Using her husband's work is a gentle dig at the authorities. What they don't like is his use of heavy religious symbolism. But even in the Soviet Union, there's a kind of artistic license which both he and Dinara take advantage of.
For me personally, the main principle of my approach to art is that one should not separate art as such from life, I would say. The so-called art is an integral part of life, the way you live. Dinara loves improvisation and is condemned for it by the critics because it doesn't fit a strict framework, a formula worked out in advance. Or, if you wish, an approved script. She loves spontaneity. We're of one mind on these principles. The principles of how to approach things.
Dinara expects her people to work long hours, but you detect a genuine team spirit about them which is quite unlike the ritual expressions of enthusiasm which you usually find in the Soviet Union.
So this man goes to the doctor with a frog on his bald head, and the doctor says, "What is your problem?" And the frog says, "I've got something stuck on my behind." Anyway, I told this joke and there was total silence. So my boss says, "What's the difference between one cup and another?" And I said, "I don't know what." He says, "There isn't any." And I fell down laughing. Everyone did. And he says, "That's funny. You see, a brilliant joke about a frog isn't funny, but a joke about a policeman is funny."
The role of the mother will be played by a leading actress from the Moscow Arts Theatre, Katya Vasilyeva. She's become almost a mascot for Dinara, appearing in virtually every film she's made. Here, in one called The Wife Has Left, she plays another unlikely Soviet heroine, a lady of doubtful morality who's only too happy at a friend's wedding to pair off with someone else's husband. The husband in question is again played by Valera Priyomnikov.
Тебе чай или кофе?
Тебе чай или кофе?
Чай.
Ваш чай. Любишь? Любишь свою жену?
Да. Который час?
5.
In this film, The Unknown One, she'll play the estranged wife of the artist father. Divorce, separation, unhappiness underpin most of Dinara's films.
Look, we're going to take a close-up of her entering the room. Watch me.
Dinara's style of working seems remarkably democratic. She appears to incorporate everyone's ideas. It's part of the smokescreen behind which she maneuvers herself away from the agreed script.
Then she can go and sit anywhere she feels right. Look through the viewer, is it okay? Here or closer to the edge?
No, that's fine as it is. I've got a medium shot.
And what if she chooses to sit somewhere else? Oh, why does it take ages to wash her bangs?
She has a reputation as the director who leaves absolutely nothing unchanged in her scripts. Just nothing. You see what I mean? But she doesn't do it out of petty egotism. Oh, no. But because it's always important for her to understand why she herself is involved in this film. She always regards her films as her personal creations, and for good reason. So she needs the freedom to change the scripts.
You think I read the script myself?
Tell me, have I lived in this apartment before?
No, it's the first time you've been here.
So, I didn't live with him here.
No, it's the first time, and the first time you've seen the pictures. A real success.
Is it all right if I talk less?
Oh, please, the less the better. And then she goes?
It's difficult. Let me wait a bit.
Dinara depends upon her relationship with long-standing colleagues like Katya Vasilyeva to help shape the final film.
Just shake off your feelings and go.
You know what I think? He should go down on his knees. You know, when you're talking like that, really slowly. He's over there first, then he comes here, and then... You know how people look at each other. You know that kind of feeling?
I can't see them both with this camera.
This camera's still only going to get him over the shoulder.
Yes, but that one can get the two shots.
Есть. Проба 18, дубль 1.
Ну вот.
Do that thing with your hands again.
Dinara normally has to wait 2 to 3 weeks to view the material she's filmed, so it's crucial to get it right the first time. However, she seldom wants to reshoot anything anyway.
Well, she always knows what she wants. But she's also a person who always listens to the opinions of others. Not just of her own circle, camera people, actors. But she also listens to what the whole crew has to say. That's very important. She never conceals anything from the production crew. She always shows you her material, and some directors prefer to hide it.
She may know what she wants to do, but as yet she hasn't decided who's going to play the young heroine.
Are you kidding? There are roaches everywhere.
She's called together the shortlist of hopefuls to play a scene in a local swimming pool. One of these girls will get the main part.
You should do everything slowly. You're supposed to be tired, right? When you notice them, you... Oh, yeah. Who are you listening to? Don't say later you didn't hear what I said, okay? So listen to me. When he turns that way, you push him. Get it? You've got to do it firmly. And then, both of you, look over there at what's happening. And then you stand up and look around again.
I'll get up, look around, and walk over there.
Yes. You go over there and you meet Sonia. And she must be able to catch you in such a state of excitement, understand? Talk a bit with Sonia. Then Sonia comes this way, but always listen to my voice, okay? They're talking. All right, now, girls, faster, faster. Keep talking now, okay? The longest scene is done.
Having shot the sequence, she discusses it with her assistant Luda. They decide they may well go for Tanya, who until now had only been in the running for a minor role. As a final test, Dinara sets up an improvised scene with Katya Vasilyeva to see how well they act together as mother and daughter. The off-screen voice is Dinara's, giving improvised lines as they go along.
Ну как не знаю, ты с ним ходила? Ищи быстро. Опять такси. Опять такси придется брать. Ну возьми такси, проедешься с понта. Вот именно, что с понта. Вся жизнь понт один. Слушай, а ты вообще даешь? Что ты деньги-то бережешь? Один раз можно... Когда будешь сама зарабатывать, я посмотрю, как ты будешь беречь. Правда, в ресторанах вот. Без тебя меня, любимый мой, из жизни в жизнь земной. И смерть не в смерть. В ресторан хочется. В ресторан хочу я, в ресторан. Целую крепкого жеребка. Ах, лететь с одним крылом. Мама, что? Естественно. Мам, ночевать-то ты придешь, нет? Ну куда я денусь, Жень? А ты замуж, может быть, еще за него пойдешь? Ну что, я зверела, что ли? Без тебя меня, любимый мой. Ну, что ли, Маша? Одной ты подумай. Громче!
Satisfied with her choice, Dinara decides to move straight on to shoot the final scene. Her endings are another hallmark of her work. Whenever Soviet cinema tackles a difficult subject, the quid pro quo is usually a neat and socially satisfactory ending that reinforces the message that all is basically well in the best of all possible socialist worlds. Dinara doesn't challenge that directly, but all her films end on an ambiguous note that leaves the audience to think for itself and the authorities with nothing clear-cut to complain about.
We got a lot of letters at the studio, asking why, for example, in the film Woodpecker, the boy doesn't manage to catch the train and meet the girl. Why in the film the wife has left, we don't know if the husband and son find her at the airport.
Догонят они маму, не догонят, встретят, не встретят.
Why in Tough Kids, we don't know if they succeed in stopping the boy from committing the crime. But it's really very simple. You have to give the viewer the opportunity to make up his own ending. You shouldn't provide the viewer with a ready answer.
Closer to us, Masha! Come on! Faster, faster!
The ending of The Unknown One will be just as inconclusive. The main characters skiing away from camera with their problems unresolved. 2 weeks later, the crew moved on to Murmansk for further shooting. There, alone in a hotel bathroom, Dinara died of a heart attack.
Dinara is no longer with us. It's very difficult for me to speak. I can't think about her separate from myself because we were very close. In every aspect of life and experience. I'm a painter. And my material is silence and color. Now I have to express in words what I normally express in silence. In a different medium. Dinara was one of those people who burn. She gave her warmth and her light to everyone who needed it. And that's why she left us so soon.
Cinema in the Soviet Union, said Lenin, is the most important of the arts. It has known more glorious days than these, but within the limitations that exist, some of its directors do attempt to grapple with the problems of their society. Dinara Asanova was one of them. And her colleagues mourn both their professional and their personal loss.
That was Leningrad movie. Its producer, as you just saw, was Richard Denton, and he's joining me now. Richard, why look at the film industry in the Soviet Union? I mean, and particularly at a film director. That's not exactly the most common of professions. What is it that you were trying to say about that country?
Well, I think Lenin's already answered the question in a sense. I mean, it's considered to be a very important art form, and art in the Soviet Union is very important. I mean, they're a very cultured people. And as a member of the intelligentsia, she was a member of a very influential social group.
But why the cinema specifically? Did you consider it, where did you consider it in the rank in ranking all art forms in the Soviet Union? Would you say it was the most important, or what?
I think it probably is one of the most important. I think one of the few occasions when I actually agree with Lenin. About the only occasion when I agree with Lenin.
Why Dinara? Why did you choose her?
We'd heard of her from English sources and also from friends, Soviet ordinary, informal friends. In fact, we managed to get to her not by saying we wanted to. We said we wanted to make a film in Leningrad, maybe at the studios, and when we got there we said, have you got any women who are interesting, you know, maybe an editor or a director?
You were looking for a woman?
We were actually looking for Dinara, but we didn't want to say so.
Oh, okay.
Because sometimes if you approach the thing head on, I don't know whether others would agree with me, but if you approach it head-on, sometimes it can produce as many problems as it solves. Sometimes, as Dinara did, you have to approach it sideways.
But you specifically wanted her.
Oh,
you
yes.
knew of her work.
We knew of her already, yeah.
Did you have any trouble getting access? Did they have any problems agreeing to that request once you said, I want to do her?
No, I don't think so, because I think they felt that they'd half suggested it themselves, which was the way I wanted them to feel about it.
Also joining me are two people who know a lot about Soviet filmmaking. Boris Fruman, who graduated a year behind Dinara, as a matter of fact, at the Moscow Institute of Cinema. He directed 2 films in the Soviet Union before he left to come to the United States, and that was 7 years ago. He now teaches film at New York University. And also Dr. Anna Lawton, who is Associate Professor of Russian Film and Literature at Purdue University. She's a consultant to the Kennan Institute, and she's now organizing a conference on the Soviet cinema. Dr. Lawton, let me begin with you. How representative would you say Dinara's work is?
She is very personal in her work. Definitely, her films bear her own mark. However, they are not unique. In recent years, there have been films that deal with controversial issues. For example, with women emancipation, the position of the elderly, even corruption in the bureaucracy, black market economy, and the juvenile delinquency, which is an alarming problem in the Soviet Union. It's rising. So other directors paid attention to this subject, and among them, one very popular film was Scarecrow by Roland Bykov. It's the story of a 12-year-old girl that was beaten and psychologically abused by her schoolmates. And the film was very popular.
Is something the authorities took notice of?
Well, it was permitted. He didn't have any problem being released.
So you're saying Dinara was not, she was hardly mainstream, but on the other hand, there were others sort of breaking up against the barriers of what was permissible.
Yeah.
Boris Fruman, you knew Dinara. Let me first ask you, is this film a fair portrait of her? You worked near her, studied near her?
Yes, I think as a director, as a person, she is fairly depicted in the film.
The people who were interviewed, it's hard for us in this country to realize this, but they were being interviewed by foreign filmmakers. Did you sense that they were leveling with the people who were talking to them? Were they saying what you know them to believe?
I think they said what they think, but also I think they didn't say many things which they wish to say, because they were talking with foreigners and they were talking on camera. I do think that what they said about Dinara personally was absolutely true, because she was a remarkable person and very good director.
But what about the rest of it? What do you think they may have left out?
Probably if they will discuss conditions in which she worked and how films are made in Soviet Union, they will definitely think twice what they say on camera.
Well, that's what I want to ask you about. How much freedom is there for Soviet filmmakers? I mean, how far can you go?
I don't think you can say much. This is how director usually deal with script, because script mostly is dialogue and very limited description, and this part is very much under control. So probably director can say more in a way how people talk, what he shows besides dialogue, in certain details, in certain treatment of relationships, but not directly.
But I guess what I'm asking is, what's off limits? What can you not address in a film? What do you have to stay away from?
If we are talking about themes, everything what is, let's say, Stalin camps, any tragic situations in Soviet experience, any ideological controversial things. They are out of discussion, out of question. Some problematic things, personal problems can be discussed. Problems of teenagers can be discussed because teenagers in Soviet view don't represent society as much as adults.
So, Dr. Lott, go ahead. You're nodding your head.
I can add a few things that are off limits in terms of political issues. For example, as Boris said, certainly ideology cannot be discussed or criticized. The political structure, foreign politics, and so on and so forth. But possibly policies on a local level can be criticized, and now it's even encouraged with Gorbachev that is fostering reforms in the economy. It's not impossible to criticize, for example, mismanagement of the economy on the local level, or inefficiency of cultural and educational institutions.
So when it's said in the film that she was bending the rules, what does that mean? Can you really, Mr. Fruman, can you really get around the censors, truly?
About certain things, yes. About certain things. You can probably say more about certain things, as I said, about people, but not about system. And also, I think you cannot discuss party, Communist Party, which is everything in ideology. You cannot criticize party, you cannot criticize basics of Soviet life. You can criticize details, but not basics.
Richard Denton.
Just one point, which is people do use allegory, and are very sophisticated in the use of allegory in the Soviet Union, both in the theater and in cinema. And that is a way sometimes people approach these problems, like Dinara did in one of her films.
Also, people who direct movies are usually better educated than people who control movies. So it's...
So you're saying we get the point. What effect would you say Dinara has had on the Soviet movie-making industry, if any? Did she change things as a result of her being there? Are things done any differently? Is anybody carrying on her legacy, if you could put it that way? Dr. Lawton?
Well, it's probably not possible to determine at this point a definite influence from her films. I think that she belongs to a special generation of filmmakers that were formed in the 60s, and they were part of an intellectual elite. More dedicated to aesthetics and to moral and issues and human values than the generation that worked in the 30s and 40s, for example, under Stalin. So other directors have characteristics that are common in a sense with Dinara. I may name Eliam Klimov, for example. He has recently been elected first secretary of the Filmmakers Union, which was a very astonishing occurrence. Nobody expected it, and it probably will mark a turning point.
Boris Fruman, what do you think her legacy is?
I agree that Dinara was part of a group of directors. She was very special because her way of showing things was her own. But her concern about moral state of Soviet people, her specific attention to human problem was hers. And I'd like to tell that the Len Film Studio at which Dinara worked at certain time for a few years was most interesting studio because number of good directors did work there. But eventually head of the studio was asked to resign because production of the studio became too open.
Last question. Any of her films, will they ever be shown in this country, do you think?
I think it's up to American distributors to do these things. I don't know how Soviet authorities will think also about letting her films to be shown.
Boris Fruman, Dr. Anna Lawton, Richard Denton. Once again, thank you all for being with us. And with that, we conclude this special 12-part series on life in the Soviet Union, Comrades. In January, Frontline will return with a new season of programs. We hope you'll join us. I'm Judy Woodruff. Good night.
For a transcript of this program, please write to Frontline, Box 322, Boston, Massachusetts, 02134. For videocassette information about this program, write to Films Incorporated, 1213 Wilmette Avenue, Wilmette, Illinois, 60091. Frontline is produced for the Documentary Consortium by WGBH Boston, which is solely responsible for its content. Major funding for this special Frontline series was provided by this station and other public television stations nationwide. Additional funding was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. A companion book entitled Comrades, Portraits of Soviet Life is published by Plume Books and is available in bookstores and libraries nationwide.